The G20 country members include the world's major economies, representing 85% of global gross domestic product, over 75% of international trade, and about two-thirds of the world's population. The group comprises of 19 countries, that of course being Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Türkiye, the United Kingdoms, and the United States. It comprises two regional bodies, namely the European Union and the African Union. Now, this weekend, the G20 Leaders Summit is expected to tackle a number of key priorities, including inclusive economic growth, artificial intelligence, and innovation and financial sustainability. But to talk more about the expectations, in studio with me, I've got SABC Political Analyst and editor, Mzwandile Mbeje. Our analyst, who is the Senior Research Fellow and Political Economist at Trade Collective, Dr. Lebohang Pheko, is hopefully going to join us throughout the conversation. When she does, we'll admit her and also ask her a couple of questions. But Mzwandile, it's so nice to have you here with us in studio. I mean, we spoke about the importance. We know the representatives. The elephant in the room is something we haven't stopped speaking about, is the fact that the US are not here. But let's talk to the latest coming out of the US and them saying that, you know, we are not allowed to, or the G20 are not allowed to adopt any declaration because they won't be present. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, it's quite sad to see this happening, particularly when the most powerful country in the world is behaving like this. The US knows that it's got the economic muscle, it's got everything, so it simply decided not to come. And then I get a sense of what you call FOMO. You make public statements, and then now everyone is saying, no, we're going there. And then you feel like you are left out. And you start to exert the pressure, and you know that you've got power, and then you start to say, no declaration. But remember, it doesn't work like that here. No one has a veto power here.
Yes.
So this is, they basically have equal status in terms of dealing with the issues. With the EU and other countries really supporting South Africa fully, the US realizes that perhaps its gamble may not have been the best. I mean, initially, the Vice President Vance was supposed to come, but I think that's my own thinking, knowing how perhaps, having watched the President of US, how he operates, this is a big occasion. So you allow your Deputy President to come, and he takes all the spotlight, takes it completely away from you. I don't think it's something that he likes. That's why then he decides that, well, no one is going there. But the fact that the show goes on, you again realize, so am I likely to miss something? Yeah. Actually, let me try and draw the attention to me. I can tell you, it's from the 1st of December when they assume that chairpersonship, so you will see how they will promote their own G20. It's just that he wants everything on his own terms. It's really not good for multilateralism, but the fact of the matter is that the majority of countries are with South Africa on this.
And this is what we're hearing. I mean, we heard the French President Emmanuel Macron coming out saying that, no, there will be a declaration and we will accept it. We're with South Africa on this. You were mentioning the EU also scheduled to have a press conference to
tomorrow, yes,
perhaps touch on that maybe tomorrow. And I think, you know, the fact that these leaders are coming, this is a reality. However, we find ourselves in a very precarious situation and in very murky waters because there's a troika happening here. Now, we took it over from Brazil. What Brazil decided, we adopted, built on that,
yes,
built our own recommendations and everything that we had said that we would do during this G20. We then hand that over to the US, who then work with what we adopted and gather their own now and work towards theirs. What do they do when we give it to them?
Yeah.
Because there's even been words being said, and I heard it was Trevor Manuel saying, he doesn't even know that SA will actually be invited to go to Miami to the G20. What do you think?
It's going to be interesting, but how the US president has been operating, he basically operates on the go. I won't be surprised if he just decides, well, actually, the troika well, we'll do it our own way, disregarding everything that is happening. Because the fact of the matter is that, Leanne, so the countries are allowed to really set their own agenda as to how they want to frame it. And I think that's what they'll want to do. I mean, one of the things he's been saying is that he wants it to be kind of like lean and mean. So that's why at some point he was saying, so he does not even know what is South Africa doing there. So clearly, once this starts, once they assume chairpersonship, the reality will be such that South Africa will be part of it. Whether they will try to kick them out, it's another subject altogether. But I can tell you, many countries will be with South Africa on this one.
All right, we've just been joined by Dr. Lebohang Pheko. It's great to have you here in the conversation. We've really just been focusing a lot, Dr. Pheko, on the US and their sort of rhetoric behind the scenes. You know, they're not appearing, they're going to be here, but they have a lot to say. I want you to pick up on the comment that was passed by the US Treasury Secretary saying that the G20 has basically become the G100, is a comment that they have said, saying that it's gone too big and we must whittle it down to basics. I want to get your comments on this, because what does this mean? And of course, they've got the presidency next year. What can they change? Morning to you.
Hi, Anne, can you hear me?
I can hear you now perfectly.
Okay, excellent. So basically, I mean, the whole notion of this is that the G20 was created to stabilize global capitalism after crisis. It wasn't actually created to democratize it per se, but it was intended, of course, to bring in different countries and different role players beyond the G7 after the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s. Now, the G20, of course, is supposed to give the appearance of inclusiveness while maintaining the basic power structures of the Bretton Woods and so on and so forth. So basically, what the US seems to be implying is that the G7 has become too large and has too many spectators, and it seems to be a callback to a previous time where there was less distribution of global power and less global consent, imagined or otherwise. I don't think that the G20 offers that much, but certainly it does at least try to give some sense of legitimacy to the original G7 hegemony, which was deeply criticized. So I think that what the US is doing is, of course, retracting back to an America first very explicitly and a very a unilateral as opposed to a multilateral culture of doing global trade, global governance, global economics, international investment, and international power. And it's a very regrettable one, particularly at a time when most parts of the world are trying to aggregate power. You know, so you do have your BRICS, you do have your African Union, you do have your European Union, and so on, which is why postures like Brexit of separating oneself and postures like the United States, especially under Trump, are really quite the eccentric but extremely dangerous and unfortunate tone to set.
So if I may just quiz you a little bit on this, because once South Africa assumed the presidency, they always said that this would be an African G20 summit. This is what the president had said. Then we've gone on to, I think, as the president has done, invite about 42 countries in total to attend this. Is this adding to Trump's irritation? Or is this what a G20 summit in Africa should look like?
I think the latter, Leanne. You know, I think that, you know, when you think around an African G20 in inverted commas, you know, it's a global platform that's hosted by South Africa. It may not be per se shaped by us, but certainly at the very least, we should ensure that it having an African venue should have some symbol, should carry African symbolism. It should also note that in as much as that we have hosted the meetings, we've set their formal agenda themes, we've chaired all the technical groups, and I mean, most of the power does lie with the G7 and so forth. But I think it would be completely inhospitable of South Africa not to have made this a far more inclusive event, particularly because we understand that our allies, our allyship, and our various strategic configurations do not lie consolidated entirely in the G20. We're a member of the BRICS, which represents no less than 80% of the global population, about 70% of global economies. So I think that it would be foolhardy to behave as though the G20 can continue to be this quaint group of, frankly, northern white men and a few brown and black faces, such as South Africa.
Yeah, certainly. Let's start rounding this up, and Mzwandile, bring you back into the conversation. So, the facts as they remain. The US is not in the room. We have got very powerful nations that are sitting in this room. So there are major opportunities. I mean, we could see this as a threat, the US not being there, but also the major opportunities that are there for us. I mean, we've got Asia, Latin America, we've got Africa, we've got Europe that are all represented, that, you know, we've got trade problems at the moment, tariffs that are huge issues. AGOA is something that is, I don't even know at the moment with AGOA. So it's big problems. The reality is that the opportunities that exist in this room are massive. So how do we handle this?
They're very massive. In fact, South Africa has always fashioned itself as the gateway to Africa. So if you want to come and do business here, so we are the center because we have infrastructure, we have just about everything that you may need in order to set up. So the fact that we are showcasing that one and then we are inviting them, they are seeing here, so helps. Not only that, I mean, the fact that we have got so many African countries who we need to really expand trade with makes much sense, because at the end of the day, so this G20 needs to go down to an ordinary man and woman on the streets in terms of the economic opportunities that we have just spoken about. The US has imposed all those tariffs, and then you are forcing people to look elsewhere. With this number of countries in one room, it's such an opportunity to expand the trade. Perhaps the reason why the US is a bit scared as well to say, well, you are going to make a declaration there, and some things that perhaps in its view will think it disadvantages them.
Yeah. Dr. Pheko, let me leave it with you, because it's a big moment that we're about to face right now, and it's murky waters. It's very important that this G20 is a success, because there's so much riding on it. The world is in a very difficult situation, whether we talk about financial problems, trade problems, climate problems, AI. There is just so much that needs to be discussed. Let's talk to how you would declare this a good G20 summit. When the lights go off on Sunday night, what would be that thing that you would look towards to say, this was a great success?
I hope you can hear me, Lian, because there's a lot of interference in my background.
I can hear you. I can hear you. If you can just speak to us, and then sorry about the noise.
Just keep going. That's fine. Just some other interrupting conversations. But I was just saying that I think that we should hope that by the end of the weekend, we should hope that we have at least had the opportunity to defend our policy space. I think that we should also have the opportunity to build a South-South protective architecture around preferential trade and currency swap arrangements. And we would also hope that we can have important conversations about reforming the WTO and global trade rules, even though I have no great grief for the WTO at all. But I think that is in terms of as just an interventionist, gradualist approach with the kind of chaos that we've seen currently with the trade tariff wars and all of that. They need a locus of some kind. And I think lastly, to think around how then we also coordinate our industrial subsidies among developing countries or countries of the majority world to block against predatory dumping. And I think the other thing is also around collective diplomacy. What would it look like to use the G20 and African Union platform simultaneously to demand different rules, more equitable, transformative rules, linking trade concessions to concrete development outcomes, such as jobs, such as technology transfer, such as a much more legitimate anti-colonial green transition, and so forth. And I think all this whilst as well trying to ensure that we maintain our positioning, even though South Africa may still be seen as a big brother symbolically. We also have to think around our symbolic leadership and how the G20 helps to put the rest of the continent amongst us on a really good foot, and to ensure that the diplomatic prestige and platform to center African-centered demand is really restored, and using, both soft and hard power, hard negotiating power.
Okay, let's leave it there. Dr. Lebohang Pheko, thank you very, very much for joining us. And of course, Mzwandile Mbeje, we'll be seeing lots of him. Our SABC News political editor will be bringing us all of the latest from the G20.